Hello and welcome to the Monday Total Soccer Show. I am Daryl Grove and I'm joined by a man who, turns out, was worth all that DP money after all. It's Taylor Rockwell.
Hey buddy, how you doing?
I'm good, thank you. So we're here, we're going to do our MLS review show. We're not going to do the whole league, because turns out there's a lot of games.
Yep.
But we're just going to go with what has caught our attention. And the thing that caught everyone's attention this weekend was Bastian Schweinsteiger's Chicago Fire debut. Chicago Fire tied 2-2 against Montreal Impact. Schweini with a goal 17 minutes into his debut.
And that's very impressive. I think overall, it seemed like it was really positive in that first half. There was a lot of good possession, lots of good moves from Chicago. And I can't decide if I'm optimistic about the move because of how good they looked in those first 45 minutes, or the fact that it was a 2-2 draw against Montreal Impact, who are currently 10th out of 11 teams in the East, haven't yet won a game, and we're missing 4 players.
But either way, at least one Total Soccer Show co-host, when they did the goalmouth, said that they were kind of against the Schweinsteiger move because it represented old MLS of paying crazy money to over-the-hill players, and that Chicago already had Dax and Juninho. I mean, if you want to step up and apologise now, that would be fine.
I don't believe that was me, my
was
friend.
Was it me? I was. I knew it was one of us.
Yeah,
it was.
No, because I would not be down on Schweinsteiger.
Okay.
I thought... I was very excited when he signed for Manchester United because I'm a Man United fan. I was sad that it didn't work out. I think it didn't work out for a number of different reasons, not all of which were because he wasn't as fit as maybe people thought he would be.
Well, isn't that the knock is that basically his legs have gone and he's not capable of playing many minutes? That didn't look true in this game.
Well, I think he's not capable of playing very many minutes if you want to do an aggressive high press, everybody running all over the place system. When it was kind of the slow possession-based style and a red hall, that suited him a little bit more.
And it worked. Right? I would argue that Dax, Juninho, Schweinsteiger, that was a midfield three that looked like it worked for long stretches of this game, right?
Now, there's definitely some moments when he has hands on knees. We'll talk about that later on. But
one of them a Montreal goal.
Yeah, I think it makes more sense if you look at the way Chicago seemed to have set up, which is Dax kind of sitting deep as that number 6, Juninho doing a little bit more box-to-box, but also not necessarily being the most defensive of players, and then Schweinsteiger doing the simple passes, finding those big balls as well.
Could we say pulling the strings?
Yeah, that's what I mean. Is he's able to do the quick little drop pass, but he's also able to pick his head up, spot that 60-yard ball downfield, play it inch perfect
into Solignac at least twice.
Yep.
Is it fair then to say Chicago's midfield is a midfield three where Dax McCarty does the tackling and the hard work, Juninho does the running, and Schweini does the passing? Schweini's essentially there for his eyes in the middle.
The only thing I would say I can't say with confidence there is about Juninho, just because we probably haven't seen enough of Chicago this season. So I don't know if that's his game, if it is running everywhere box to box, or if he's a little bit more free in the attack, and so we see him running more there, whereas when he's dropping back into defense, maybe that's a little bit more rigid.
It was a little confusing, right? Because sometimes we'd see him almost as a two-man, I want to call it a double pivot, alongside Dax, and then sometimes we'd see him alongside Schweinsteiger and just McCarty deep. But maybe that is the system, is that he does a bit of both.
Yeah, I think so. Because I think even in that system, then it became more of a 4-1-4-1 than a 4-3-3.
Yeah.
That seemed to suit Chicago as well.
So shall we get to Schweinsteiger's goal? So as much as he's all about the passing, he's also all about the heading from crosses, right? That was a Schweini...
At least in this situation,
It was a Schweini trait, right? To arrive late in the box and score.
Is it? I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's one of the things he did. Or did.
Okay.
Yeah.
He did it here.
Well, not so much for Manchester United, but for Germany through the years and for Bayern. Maybe it's easier playing for Bayern.
Yeah.
I want to call this goal Master Set Piece Theatre. Are you with me?
Yeah, absolutely.
A perfectly worked out corner kick routine set piece that just confused the Montreal defence.
So you want to take us through it?
Kind of, except it's very complicated.
Yes.
I feel like there were, and this is the good thing about the set piece, it's Alvarez takes it, but there are at least 3 or 4 different things going on.
Right.
And I feel like it means that Chicago had various options after this routine starts, and they can just pick whichever one is working.
Yeah, I think
is that
so.
fair?
Yeah, I think so, because it's Alvarez takes it, he plays it to Akam. Akam drops it to Juninho.
He keeps it moving. Akam, drops it as the right... it's away from goal,
Yeah, drops it to Juninho, who's standing at the top corner, near maybe 20 yards out.
Yeah.
And then I think Alvarez he kind of checks in behind Akam, then he makes a run in behind, and I think that's the first option, is that if Montreal step poorly or don't step, you can thread that ball through, and suddenly Alvarez is in on goal or going at goal at pace.
Oh, so you're saying the plan was if Montreal didn't step up high enough, then he could have been onside, but also like down that right channel if they'd slipped in the ball. And you see Juninho look, right? He thinks maybe.
But I think Montreal have done a good job to kind of block off those passes, and they haven't been overly aggressive in their step, so that pass isn't on. So then Juninho plays it back to Akam. Akam takes that touch, then he plays that ball in. Schweinsteiger finds it, and it's 1-0 to Chicago.
And the great thing Schweini does is, while all this sort of complicated machinations of possible set pieces, this multi-pronged Chicago corner kick that is happening, Schweini doesn't just stand next to his mark, he stands off a little bit, I think, to give himself a bit of a run-up so that he can attack this ball.
Yeah.
And he's between Duval, I think, the right back, not Robert Duval, Chris Duval, and Kamara, so that neither of them quite has him. And then as soon as it's clear that Akam's going to cross this ball, then he steps in.
Yeah, and I think it's Duval maybe is the one who's supposed to be primarily tracking Schweinsteiger.
Right. Are we looking to point a finger of blame here?
Well, maybe except that Campbell for Chicago is also kind of wide open at the back post. And I think Duval is doing that classic, like, I've got two guys, I don't know what to do here, so I'm just going to try to mark both. And because he's worrying about both, Schweinsteiger is able to get goal side of him and in between him and the other center back.
And here's a little peek behind the TSS curtain. When we saw Campbell doing something positive in like occupying Duval and making a bit of space for Schweinsteiger, we cheered in the Total Soccer Show office.
I think this is more you. You seem to feel bad about criticizing Campbell.
Well, because when Chicago got destroyed, I think it was by Atlanta 4-0, and Campbell was basically a one-man onside trap.
Yep.
we were very critical of his performance. So it was good to see him do something right here.
Except for the fact that then he's kind of to blame for Montreal's equalizer.
I will hear nothing against Campbell, but yes, he kind of was.
I like this, this all of a sudden you're this huge Campbell defender. I don't know where this came from, but yeah, the equalizer.
One of us has to be, and it's not Campbell.
Fair. The equalizer comes from Mancosu. It's a great ball. Great ball in for him. He does a couple different clever things in there, one of which is completely confused Campbell.
So the cross comes from... Actually, can I wind us back a bit to Donadell?
Yeah.
The cross-field ball from Donadell is something very, very special, I think. It's actually Schweini who's up on him and is kind of blocking the angles, but yet Donadell bends it from the left side around Schweini, around a load of Chicago players, out to the right flank for Duval to chase down. It's a little ahead of him, but he gets there.
Yep.
So Duval, banging forward from the right, puts in a really nice cross for Mancosu. But when you watch this on the replay, Mancosu does a couple of very, very clever things.
Well, first of all, he's very obviously gesturing for the ball to be played into his head because he's kind of hitting his head.
Does he hit his head? I can't tell if he just points or hits.
Yeah. I mean, either way, he's basically calling for the header.
So points for verbal communication. Non-verbal communication. Yeah.
Then excellent. He does a really good job of making that run towards the near post, and I think you spotted this one. Or it looks like he's going to make the run to the near post, but then he checks off.
It's a fake, right?
And then goes to the far post, and that little feint draws Campbell in, so then Campbell takes the wrong position, thus he can't get a clean header to it, which is why the ball goes just over his head, but falls to Mancosu, who's able to put it in the back of the net.
Yeah, because for a second, Campbell's got the jelly legs, because he's gone one way and not the other way, and he's then when he tries to jump, he's not close enough to Mancosu, not in line with the ball, over his head onto Mancuso.
Yep.
And Mancuso then, I think, heads it into the near post, which is a tough header, right? Because it's a smaller target that you're aiming for.
Yeah.
It's like shooting one prop.
But he does the very smart, He does the very smart thing of that you're taught to do. You head it down and you put power on it if you can, but the bigger thing is head it down and make it difficult for the keeper. And that's exactly what he does, and that's exactly why it's a goal.
Oh, so great goal from Montreal, but I still felt like Chicago had the better of this game. Thanks to that midfield three of McCarthy, Juninho, Schweinsteiger. Really did a great job of just one-time, clever little passes that evaded the Montreal midfield for most of the game. Yeah,
I would say maybe not Juninho, since he doesn't see out this game. He's sent off in the 71st minute.
It was good while it lasted.
Yeah. Forcing a change from Chicago, which is why you have Nikolic leave the field, because then you have to worry about
you're a Nikolic booster, right?
Yeah. But except for the fact that then 9 minutes later, a ball in from Schweinsteiger forces a bad defensive play, and you get the red card to Cabrera, basically.
Can we talk about these balls from Schweinsteiger? Because I think, again, this is what he's there for. These are the eyes I was talking about earlier. So many times, is it, who's the centre forward who came on, the number 9? Solignac?
Solignac, yeah.
Solignac, I was close. I got two consonants wrong in my head. Solignac has two great through balls that he receives from Schweinsteiger. One where he just receives it with his left, swivels instantly, plays it through. Is that the one that is the Cabrera second yellow?
I can't remember.
Okay.
I'm not sure which one it was from Schweinsteiger, but I know it's a very, very clever ball that he basically places between the two defenders.
Yeah.
Sonjak is onto it, and that's why he gets pulled back.
I'm calling this a win for Schweinsteiger because there's so many through balls from him behind the Montreal defense that we can't remember which one it is.
It also forces you, if you're a team that's trying to back off a little bit, it forces you to have to step to Schweinsteiger because he can spot those balls and can play them into very tight space.
She's saying you can never risk giving him time to
exactly.
do it. Yeah.
Yeah. Because otherwise you get a second yellow and your own sending off, and suddenly it's back to 10v10. Or it goes to 10v10 rather.
And then a great last 10 minutes of this game. Weirdly, all starts with actually last 5 minutes, right? 'Cause it's almost the 90th minute when our friend Jean-Yves Tabla, Jean-Yves Balou Tabla, I apologise, scores what should be the winning goal for Montreal.
I think it might still be Balou Jean-Yves Tabla. I think it's too many names.
Let's go with Tabla. Let's go with Tabla.
That's the way to do it.
So a bit of backstory. We saw him play for Montreal's USL team last season. Really looked a player. Piatti was not fit to go today. So Montreal are just like, all right, if our star player is not ready, we'll put in this teenager and we'll see what he can do.
And I think what he was aiming to do was embarrass some Chicago players because he was the one who kind of looked the most comfortable taking on defenders in 1v1 situations, trying to make something happen. For this goal, he didn't really have to take anybody on because no one stepped to him. So he was able to shoot from about 20 yards out, 25 yards out, because I think all the Chicago defenders were just trying to get their positioning right and maybe didn't want to overcommit because nobody wanted to overcommit. Nobody committed, period. And that's why there are, 4 players, if you want to count Dax McCarty standing there when that shot comes.
Okay, I've got a list of the accused here for this Tabla goal. The accused for not stepping are Daniel Johnson, the winger, number 20, who came on late. Michael Harrington, the fullback, who turns his back. And number 16, our friend again, Campbell, also turns his back. And
I was very inclined to blame Johnson for this because I thought it was Schweinsteiger, and it would fit the narrative of he's kind of out of shape because Johnson really does this very slow trot. Back, it to the extent that it looks like he's almost injured because he's not really lifting his legs at all. It's like a shuffle run. And then he is the one who slowly steps to Tabla, but is very much too late. But if you watch the replay, and I think to your point, it's more likely to be those two defenders who I think could have taken better positioning. I think Johnson is maybe there to block off passing options to not let them drop back to. I think it's Damaduro who's in the middle of the field at this point.
I want to, if I was judge and jury here, I'd be looking at Harrington the most. Not least because Tabla's on the left, Harrington's the right back. He's the one. He's got no one else outside of him. I don't think there's any overlapping. Younger's not on the field.
I think somebody comes late, and maybe that's why Harrington doesn't commit. But it's not as though that run is obvious, and so he's trying to kind of deal with both things. That run comes in, I think, as Tabla is driving to shoot.
Or is it maybe they're scared of him because he's dribbled at people the whole game and backed people off? No one wants to be the one who tries to tackle him because he's going to dance around you, because that really is what he did for most of the game.
Yeah, I mean, he's definitely very clever, but I would hope that that's not the case because that's not how you deal with a player like that.
You run away from them.
Yeah, obviously, since it leads to a goal.
If you run away from a good dribbler, he can never get past you. That's just known.
Sure, but instead he can put the ball in the back of the net. Well, he kind of, if you wanted to say it, you could say he kind of posterizes that Chicago defense because we freeze-framed it, and it's Harrington and Campbell are both doing that kind of sticking a foot out each to try to block the ball, and they're both looking away. Yeah. So it just looks very embarrassing because meanwhile Tabla looks like this predator who's finishing the ball and looks lethal in front of goal, and then these two are
just waving their legs at it and turning their back on it. Looking like a very bad toll booth.
Yeah.
Also, keeper gets beaten near post. Not ideal. Is that just because he didn't know it was coming? Maybe his view's blocked? I want to give him an excuse.
I'm going to say he maybe saw it late because he does have, like we said, 3 players kind of lined up in front of him. But I think he also assumes that shot is going far post, and so he does a little bit of a jump as it's coming, and then I think just can't get back across and down low. Not even back across, but just can't get down as a result because he shifted a little bit to the left. His weight's off, so in the time it takes him to get back down, that's when the ball goes in the back of the net.
Okay, and then this should have been, I want to say, a Chicago Fire home loss because Montreal are 2-1 up last few minutes. But cometh the hour, cometh the man. This time the man was Dax and was Solignac. Solignac with really the kind of goal that you dream about as a striker, right? Take it on your chest, turn at the top of the box, bang it from outside the 18, I believe, and put it in the corner.
Yeah,
but it all starts with Daniel Johnson.
Yeah, who basically has a bad sequence of play where he loses the ball, then fails to tackle twice. Then eventually Chicago get the ball back. It goes back to him. He doesn't step to it in time, so then it's a loose ball that Dax McCarty picks up.
Essentially, Dax McCarty is doing he's like sweeping up after Johnson two or three times. Yeah. And then Dax beats, is it Donadell? I think Dax beats Donadell in essentially a 50-50 tackle, comes away with the ball, chips it into Solignac to set up the chance for this goal. And I've got to be honest, I couldn't help thinking, Dax is the other number 6 for the US. Does Michael Bradley win that 50-50? I know Bradley can play that ball. Does he win that 50-50?
I don't think so. No, because that's not. We've talked about this before. That's not what he's good at. He's not good at stepping and being under control and winning the ball off players. He tries to step at times, but I think in those moments has a tendency to get turned, and so he doesn't want to overcommit, and so he will do that sort of what Chicago were doing when they allowed Montreal to go ahead, is that kind of standoff,
block the angles.
I'll block it off and then let somebody else come in. And
just to be clear, I'm not advocating necessarily for Dax over Bradley, but I am advocating if we have a game, if the US national team has a game where we need to defend a bit more, we play a superior opponent, I'm not opposed to Bradley and McCarty sort of double defensive midfielder situation.
So if you're going like very defensive then, basically, you put the two of them in there?
Yeah, I think that could work. I can see the energy, the legs, and the sort of fierceness of Dax McCarty would be really helpful.
Kellen Acosta might like a word with you.
Also, Kellen Acosta, that would be
so now we've got 3 in there?
Yeah, well, at least we've got options.
Now we're back to the old criticisms of Bob Bradley.
Yeah, throw Maurice Edu in there as well. We're good to go.
5 defensive midfielders. Why not?
Get them all in there. Yeah. No strikers, all defensive midfielders. It's the future.
So in the end, a 2-2 draw. Chicago and Montreal still outside the playoffs looking in, although there are, I believe, 7 months left until the playoffs, as Matt Doyle pointed out.
We're okay for a while.
And I really do think, though, that Chicago will be happy that they got those goals, that they were able to pull back and get that point. But again, Montreal on the road, a team that hasn't won, a team that's missing players, I do have to believe that Chicago feel like this is maybe 3 points or 2 points lost. Right?
Yeah. No Piatti, no Simon. Bernier couldn't start. I think he came on. So, Younger, So there are a lot of major Montreal players missing there. One thing I'll say, what happens next if you don't have Juninho suspended, right, for those 2 yellows? How do Chicago put together a functional midfield? Because now I can see that I was wrong. It does make sense to have McCarty, Juninho, Schweinsteiger, but I don't know about Chicago's depth and who can fill those roles.
It's tough to say, right? Because it's Deleu, I believe is how you pronounce that one.
I think I was more attacking, but I can't say that I know him very well.
No, I mean when he was there, I think it was like a 4-4-1-1, and he was the first of the ones there, not the primary attacker, but the kind of support striker. There we go. With Juninho out, I can't see you put him in there and it becomes like a standard 4-3-3 again. So it'll be interesting to see what they do, because I also don't think I would trust a 4-2-3-1 of McCarty and Schweinsteiger.
Right, yeah. So it might mean more legwork for Schweinsteiger going forward. So we'll see what Chicago do next week.
We will indeed.
The other thing is, looking around the league here, I noticed a lot of, Montreal, a good example, a lot of guys coming back from international duty. Suddenly they're not as strong, and you can't field your strongest team. Right. It's definitely like a weirdly down week in MLS for big name players starting games.
Yeah, I think we had, when you put out the tweet about what do you want to hear about from this weekend, I think we had a couple people say the impact of the international break. And I think it was obvious that it's certainly it's new players coming in, but it's also players that would otherwise be there not being there.
Yeah.
It's always going to make it difficult to play the kind of cohesive game that I think a lot of MLS teams are trying to play.
I was just thinking, so we're not going to be reviewing this game because we didn't watch it in depth, but just for entertainment, I watched the second half of Seattle-Atlanta. And as I understand it, Clint Dempsey didn't start the game for Seattle because he'd had a busy week. Joseph Martinez injured on international duty for Atlanta, and Almiron also sat out most of the game because playing for Paraguay in the international break. So why does this happen in MLS? Why is MLS a bit more willing to rest its international players the week after?
I think because right now, as we said, we're like 4 or 5 games into the season. It's not like it's the Premier League where we're kind of getting to the home stretch where there's so much to play for. Everybody can't afford to drop points, so you got to put people back in there. You can't risk it. You can't rest anybody.
So there's no threat of relegation, no threat of losing your Champions League place. You got to play your players in Premier League.
And I would also add that it's at the point of the season where I think you can have an expectation that like everyone knows what we're doing. Like we've been playing together now since August, so it shouldn't be like you're gone for a week and you come back and suddenly you've forgotten everything. I'm not saying that's what happens in MLS, but it's much earlier in the season. So if you have gotten into that rhythm, then it's broken up. It might be a little bit harder to get back into it because it's so early on, whereas with the Premier League, with La Liga, with Bundesliga, it is much more, we've been playing together for eight months at this point. If you go away, you come back, there's still an expectation that you know how to execute the game plan that we've been executing.
Speaking of planning, we have a sponsor today, Taylor. The sponsor is Health IQ.
That's right. Health IQ wants to give financial rewards to health-conscious people. They've partnered with major life insurance companies to get lower rates for people with a healthy lifestyle.
So what they do is they take science and data, and they use that data to fight for lower rates on life insurance for health-conscious people. That's runners, cyclists, weightlifters, swimmers, vegans, vegetarians, and soccer players.
Yep. And I have to say, and I know that they've actually done this, but I feel like this is a way that you and I would get around like making an argument that we haven't really, like, can't really back up with soccer. We'd be like, science and data. Science and data says it's true. Science and data. But with Health IQ, it's actually real science and data.
Oh, yeah. So, if you play soccer at any level, could be MLS, could be just your Sunday league. If you run around a bit, then you have made a health-conscious lifestyle.
Yeah.
I think you have to do a little more running than Bastian Schweinsteiger is going to do with Dax and Janino. But you've made a health-conscious choice.
Yeah,
One of the things you do when you sign up at Health IQ, you can take quizzes. You take the quizzes to basically to prove that you know about healthy lifestyle.
Oh, boy.
I've got a quiz for you, Taylor.
Oh, dear.
Are you ready?
I'm as ready as I think I will ever be.
So this quiz is about running.
Okay.
First question. When perfecting running form, it helps protect the knees to take steps that are relatively A, soft and quiet.
Oh, I forgot multiple choice. This is key.
B, unpredictable. I don't think it's that.
I don't think it's that.
C, hard and impactful. Or D, loud and strong. So soft and quiet, unpredictable, hard and impactful, or loud and strong.
I feel like hard, impactful, and loud and strong are very similar. I'm going soft and quiet.
That would make sense to me. All right,
so.
we'll click it. We'll see.
And I got it correct. Hooray! There we go. Okay.
Next up.
We should clarify that we're looking at this on the big board. That's how I knew that.
What tip for treadmill runners can improve running form in addition to better simulating outside running? Is it use a 1 to 2% incline, use a very long stride, I feel like you'd fall off, use negative incline, use visual of oval track?
I'm going to say use 1 to 2% incline.
Okay, we'll click on that one. You got it right.
Hooray.
Well done. All right, you got time for one more?
Sure, why not?
Okay. Well done so far, by the way.
Thank you.
What exercise can help align pelvis over femur to improve postural problems that cause knee pain in runners? The multiple choices: A, planks, B, air bench, C, push-ups, D, pull-ups.
Don't know what air bench is? I'm going to say planks.
So planks to help align pelvis over femur to improve postural problems.
Sure. I feel like you're doing the the Who Wants to Be a Millionaire thing where you reread the question again as though I've gotten it wrong. But we'll see. It was air bench.
It was air bench. We don't know what air bench is.
But it's very important, apparently.
Okay, so there are 10 questions in total. You got 2 out of 3 early on, so you still could have scored well.
There we go.
You got 67 points so far.
Okay.
The way Health IQ works, sorry I put it all on you. The way Health IQ works is the more quizzes you take, the more points you get, the more you prove that you know about a healthy lifestyle.
So go to healthiq.com/TSS. The link will be in the show notes to take the quiz and get a quote.
All right, thank you to Health IQ for sponsoring today's episode.
Thank you, Daryl Grove, for being a very good proctor for that Health IQ quiz. And you really did. You did the Regis Philbin thing where you reread the question again as if to say, you sure that's what you want to go with?
Well, I got experience from Soccer Trivia Night.
Yeah, exactly.
That we did at Penny Lane. I know you weren't meaning to promote this, but we've just confirmed that we're going to have the second Soccer Trivia Night at Penny Lane here in Richmond, Virginia, April 27th, Thursday, April 27th, 7:30 to 9:30 at Penny Lane.
And one whole section is going to be dedicated to figuring out what exactly happened in Minnesota United RSL.
I think that game will be old news by that point, but maybe we should talk about it now. Because what did happen in Minnesota 4, Real Salt Lake 2?
The answer is a lot of goals.
Yes.
The other answer is I'm not entirely certain, is how I'll phrase that one.
Oh, so let's start with saying congratulations to Minnesota United and to fans of the Loons, because it's the first MLS win. It is important to sort of get that on the board after a really rough start.
You were very much building towards. With that said, or just a big old butt, whichever you prefer.
With a big old butt. Yeah. Because it was not an impressive game of soccer, sort of technically or tactically, I want to say. I also think maybe that field is not conducive to good soccer. No.
Whatever do you mean?
No.
So it was also played in the Matrix, which didn't help either.
Well, that was more about our stream.
Yeah.
The field, is it TCF Bank Stadium in Minnesota? I know that it is not Minnesota's permanent home, but it is also, it looked like some thick AstroTurf.
Yeah, it reminded me of like the little like indoor pitches that we would play on in Turkey, which are actually outdoor, but they're fenced in, but they wouldn't get raked very often. So you'd get like the buildup of those little black rubber pellets all around the side.
Yes.
So then it really made it playing on the sides kind of treacherous because it was a little bit uneven and they'd be flying up everywhere. That's exactly what this looked like, where you'd have a player run. Sometimes it would just be a simple step and you'd see the pellets fly up. Yep. Sometimes it'd be a slide tackle and a whole bunch of them would go flying up.
Is that, you think that's what slowed things down?
Yeah.
I want to say maybe it needed watering as well. I feel like those AstroTurf fields, field turf fields, the ball skips a little better when it's got a bit of wet to it.
I never thought about that. I never thought about watering an artificial field. I don't know if that's the thing that happens, but I think you're definitely right. That
it doesn't make plastic grow, I don't think.
But it definitely looked like both teams had difficulty dealing with the pitch.
Yes.
And then maybe the giant bright yellow lettering of Minnesota threw some people off as well.
Yeah, maybe it did, yeah. I mean, maybe that's Nick Rimando's excuse.
Yeah, sure.
Should we start with, I tell you what, I feel like Minnesota fans might be angry at us because we're sort of picking holes in their first ever win. So maybe we'll start with the positive for Minnesota United. And for me, from what I saw of this game, which was the 20-minute condensed highlights, it's the play of Christian Ramirez.
Not Brent Coleman.
At centre forward. Okay. No, not so much Brent Coleman.
Okay.
Although he does, Brent Coleman does play the ball for Christian Ramirez's best moments.
Yes. So, and it's something that you spotted. He does it routinely. He does a really good job of dropping deep, to help link up play, but then he can also stretch defenses at the same time.
I said Diego Costa, who reminds me of Diego Costa. So Ramirez...
Which made me turn my head abruptly, because I was like, what? Like, did he just punch somebody or instigate? But I see what you mean, yeah.
Diego Costa's good twin.
Yeah.
So he does a really good job of like sticking with the two centre-backs, forcing them back all the time, keeping them occupied, but then peeling away from them, connecting play deep, and then once he's connected play, then running back in behind the defenders. I think that's a Diego Costa trait. I think it's a Ramirez trait, and it was really on display in what would be the second goal for Minnesota. Ramirez's first.
Right, so it's a ball in from Coleman. He like kind of settles it with his thigh, but holds off an RSL player. Yeah, holds off Wingert, plays it to Molino, who takes a couple touches, and then does a nice little instep left pass, splits two defenders. Ramirez is onto it.
And he's already gone, right? After he's played the ball, he's already gone in behind. Yeah.
And doesn't it, I think, like a little bit of a Trivela finish? Yeah. It's like a kind of like outside of the boot, nice little chip
stab,
finish.
Right? Yeah, it's half shovel, half stab.
Yeah.
I also, I think you say holds off Wingert. That's an understatement.
Yeah.
Because he sort of strong arms him, and I think Wingert tries to like push in underneath him, and he just like forces him back down. Have you ever seen someone get drowned in a horror movie? That's kind of what Ramirez does to Wingert.
Wow, you went
just holds him down.
You went real vivid here.
Oh, I did, yeah.
And then maybe Nick Rimando wishes he had drowned in a horror movie, if you want to go that route, because the third goal for Minnesota, it's basically just a long ball over the top that at first it looks like it's a well-hit ball, but I think, again, because of the turf, it takes an awkward kind of bounce, so it's not into the path of... It was Ramirez, wasn't it, that they were aiming for. Yeah. Instead, it goes to Rimando, who does a good job to be off his line.
Yep.
But he tries to settle it with his chest. It pops up in the air. And I think it was maybe the way he tried to chest it that set him up for failure. Yeah,
so everyone's going to focus on essentially the failed Cruyff turn. If you haven't seen this is what happens. Rimando tries to Cruyff, misses the ball, and Ramirez is just free to walk it into the net and then still bash it. He really slams it hard. Yeah. He Addy smashes it to finish.
But he does it from... 3 inches from goal. He definitely waits until he's at a point where there's no way he can miss.
Yeah, I mean, it would be the miss of all time if he did, right? Yeah, which was clever on his part, right? Because you get the drama of smashing it into the back of the net with the low risk of being very, very close to goal when you do it.
Because I've heard from an early age, you never ever try to smash on an open goal because otherwise you're going to be in trouble.
Yeah, because you do that from 18 yards, there's a chance whoosh over the top. So well done, Ramirez. Yeah, not so well done, Nick Rimando.
No.
So what we were saying was, everyone's going to focus on the failed Cruyff, which has Rimando spinning in circles. But the reason that he's set up for that is he tries to chest it down onto his right foot, overhits it, I want to say, and then he, from that moment he's sort of struggling because he's already spinning, trying to get to it, and then it makes it harder and harder for him to pull off that move.
Yeah, exactly.
Because Nick Rimando good with his feet. That's what we know about Nick Rimando, right? He's one of the American goalkeepers that's very good with his feet, very good at playing the ball out from the back.
Yeah, and then I think even I think maybe it was the fourth goal. I could be wrong on that one, but it's another example of maybe RSL overall struggling to play out of the back, play with their feet, because it's essentially what he plays it short to Kyle Beckerman. Kyle Beckerman comes under pressure. He plays it wide to Schmidt, who then ttries to dribble out of the back, gets stuck. Minnesota go right back down and score.
I feel like there should immediately have been that Austin Powers cutaway for when when Schmitty is killed at work and everyone is very sad about it.
But it was kind of that was another good example of the way this game went, which it felt like you had some good attacking play, specifically from Minnesota, a couple good attacking moves from RSL, and then it was just some very questionable defensive positioning, some decisions that were made by the defenses on both sides.
Weird clearances, some clearances up in the air, right? Yeah. Even Minnesota's equalizer, the Molino header, is from, I believe it's Winger, just sort of getting his foot underneath it and lifting it up in the air.
I mean, I think he sees it late and he has his plant foot down, and so he tries to adjust but can't. It goes off of his foot. Molino comes in and heads it home. So there's that. But even like RSL's, when they go ahead 1-0, courtesy of Mulholland, it's Calvo who just misses a header. It's Wingert playing the ball in, and Calvo, it looks like maybe he tries to like dive to get that extra power behind it. Instead, he just flicks it right into the path of Mulholland, who finishes. And so I think, again, that's an example where it's sort of shooting yourself in the foot there. Minnesota's defense doing it in that situation. RSL's defense doing it kind of consistently, and I think maybe it's a little bit more defensible for RSL because of the number of injuries they had coming into this game.
Yeah, that's fair, and also they're not used to that.
Well, there's that too. Yeah,
turf. But was it 6 injuries they had coming into this?
Yeah, 5 or 6. Yeah,
and then even more not long into it, because you could, if you were a Real Salt Lake fan, you could make the argument that we were winning this game with our threadbare team in the 4th minute, and Minnesota fans were panicking again because they thought, oh no, not again.
Yep.
And then is it Mound, the centre back, goes down injured. That means Real Salt Lake have to shuffle an already sort of depleted defence. I think then Wingert comes in from right back to centre back. Man goes out. Eventually, Sonny comes in and plays right back.
No, Sonny goes to midfield. Mulholland goes to right back.
Poor Mulholland goes from goal scorer to I've got to play right back to then getting subbed out late in the game.
60th minute, I think. Yeah, because he's getting abused down that right hand side.
But you can really see that this is not Real Salt Lake's even close to first choice defence. Justin Glad, who we were all about, he's out injured.
Yeah, and I'm sure there's more to it than this, but it does make me wonder because we knew Mike Petke traveled with the team but wasn't in charge of the team. He was watching, not coaching. It makes me wonder if he was like, maybe I'll wait till we're home and we have a couple guys back before I make my competitive debut, so just in case.
If you're not up to date on Real Salt Lake, they fired Jeff Cassar last week, appointed Mike Petke, former New York Red Bulls manager. He was also the USL team manager. And yeah, you're right. I think Petke was like, I'll come along and I'll watch, but I'm not taking full responsibility for this result.
And that was an intelligent decision on his part because he has definitely got his work cut out for him. And I think maybe getting an extra week in there to get some more practice to figure some things out rather than having to figure it out on the fly with players that you're not quite familiar with. It makes a little more sense.
So already a good move from Mike Petke.
Yeah, I think so.
But Real Salt Lake not looking good. He can turn it around. Didn't you say that you saw on Twitter someone said that Real Salt Lake were so bottom of the West that they weren't even featured on the table?
Yeah, I think ESPN had like a graphic of the Western Conference standings, and it was only 1 through 10. I guess maybe because they have the set one from last year, so they haven't added the 11 teams.
That's my guess, the 10-team template from last season.
RSL currently 11th, so they did not make the top 10 teams in the West.
Oh, but Minnesota off the bottom at least. Yeah,
into 10th.
So congratulations to Minnesota United and that performance from Christian Ramirez, which I think is the future for Minnesota going forward. But maybe they also need to sort out their defending.
Maybe future of the US national team, you never know.
Yeah, maybe. I would not be opposed to a call-up for Christian Ramirez based on what I saw in this game. But that's maybe a topic for another day.
Probably.
All right, shall we move on to the final thing that caught my eye this weekend? Was Kekuta Manneh. The transfer caught my eye, Thursday. Manneh went to Columbus Crew from Vancouver. It was an exchange for Charney and some allocation money. I was really hoping to see his name.
Maybe draft picks too?
Oh, maybe.
Yeah.
I was hoping to see Manneh on the team sheet for Columbus Crew as they faced Orlando City. He wasn't there.
He was not.
But I think Mane's arrival at Columbus may have upped Justin Meram's game, at least for the afternoon.
Maybe he all of a sudden was like, wait, who's this guy?
Yep.
And he's an American too?
He went and watched some highlights?
Yeah.
So Meram scored both goals as Columbus Crew beat Orlando 2-0. Haven't seen the game. Honestly, if Manneh had played, I'd have been all in on watching 90 minutes.
I think so, yeah.
But he didn't, so I just watched Meram's goals.
And I think part of that is because Columbus, and maybe this reflects their kind of like, it looked like weak attendance. I could be wrong. It looked like maybe it was raining, maybe it wasn't that nice of a day, but it seemed like the stadium wasn't particularly full. And I wonder if that's maybe because right now Columbus don't have like the big draw of names that maybe Manneh will be. And so maybe it doesn't quite...
Maybe. He's not quite a Schweini, is he?
No, he's not. But it's surprising to me given... yes, they've played, I think, one game more than a couple other teams, but Columbus top of the East right now. So it seems like that would be a team that would be getting a big attendance, getting a lot of support. And especially given that, they're beating Orlando 2-0, and it's 2 good goals from Justin Meram. It seems like that would be more exciting.
So if you can picture both these goals, it's Meram cutting in from the left and finishing at the far post. One with his left foot, one with his right foot. Providing the complete cutting in threat.
Yeah, and both times it seems like he had made a really good run, like made a smart play to get himself into position, then made a bad decision in like hurting his angle or cutting it back. For first one, he like took a narrow angle, but then still finished with his left foot. For the second one, it seems like he had to cut back, maybe slow down the momentum a little bit. Then he finishes with his right foot. And I mean, it's really well done by him on both accounts.
It's got me thinking, where does Mane fit in? Because if Meram is doing this thing where he's cutting in and scoring from the left, if Ethan Finlay is providing crosses from the right, then you've got Ola Kamara as their main goal scorer, and you've got Federico Higuain in behind. There's no obvious hole where Kekuta Manneh goes, and yet Columbus seem to really want him.
Yeah, I mean, they traded away a lot to get him.
So is he just an extra weapon and they can rotate around a bit?
Well, I mean, what did Greg Berhalter say? He said he could be any position on the field, roughly?
Yeah, because he even said, he said a 7, 11 and a 9, so that's what, like right wing, left wing, centre forward. Yep. And he said he's not a 10, which is, Higuain's playmaker position, but essentially we can find a way to fit him in there. Yeah. And so I think that means if Higuain's not playing for any reason, it's essentially 2 forwards with maybe Mane just a little bit behind Kamara.
Yeah. So it seems like maybe it's about assembling the pieces that you think you need and then maybe being willing to sacrifice the pieces that you don't absolutely need. Because we know Tony Tchani went and had a very good debut for Vancouver. So maybe it was sort of like, we don't really want to part with him, but we need another attacking threat. We need somebody exciting. Let's get him in.
And if we're honest, if we're just being selfish, we're thinking about Kekuta Manneh, now a US citizen. I think his paperwork is still being processed. He could very well play for the US national team, maybe at the Gold Cup this summer. So we kind of need Manneh to have a really good few months for Columbus Crew, light it up, then he makes the Gold Cup squad. Because he offers pace and directness and like really good technique and trickery. So it's a really interesting mix of things that Manneh could bring to the US national team.
Absolutely. And then maybe, this is not the case at all, but maybe it was also that Greg Berhalter was like, Tony Tchani, you can stick around as long as you're US eligible. But as soon as you decide that you're definitely playing for Cameroon, we're swapping you out for a guy who is eligible for another country, but is now here playing for the United States.
Actually, does that change things? Once Tony Tchani becomes a Cameroonian international, even if he has a permanent resident card, does he take up a different international spot on the roster? Neither of us know the answer to this.
I don't know the answer to that, but I would assume so, yes.
That's part of building an MLS roster, right? Someone's going to be tweeting that at us right now.
Absolutely.
It is at Total Soccer Show.
Can I sing? I want to sing Justin Meram's praises one more time, though, because
you go for it.
I mentioned that I felt like he killed his angle on the first one, but I think how sharp he was with that left foot to finish is part of the reason why he's able to score the second goal. Because you and I have both defended against players that we know are predominantly one-footed, if they're predominantly right foot, that you're always trying to put them onto their left foot. You're willing to really put them in positions where they could score with their left foot.
But they're not going to take it.
Exactly. And it does make me wonder if maybe the Orlando players are like, okay, just don't let him be on his left foot. We're fine. As long as we slow him up, he shot with his right.
Yep.
Oh, okay, he can do both, apparently.
It's like they called his bluff and he put down a full house.
Exactly.
With his left foot.
Yeah.
All right, so we didn't get to talk about every game in Major League Soccer because it's not possible for 2 guys and 1 TV to do that.
Yep.
But we will be talking FC Dallas versus Pachuca. It's actually at Pachuca, right? That game is Tuesday night. It's the CONCACAF Champions League semi-final, and it's a big game for FC Dallas. It's their chance to get into the CONCACAF Champions League final. Wednesday morning, we will watch and review that game for better or worse.
Yeah, and the 2 things I've seen...
It's like agreeing to marry someone before you know what's really going on.
The 2 things I've seen so far that I find particularly interesting. So FC Dallas, we knew, didn't play this weekend, I think in preparation for this Tuesday night game. They beat the Puebla Reserves 2-0 in preparation for this match.
That's what they were doing.
They've also been in Mexico, apparently adjusting to the altitude and the atmosphere. So they're trying to get ready to handle what's to come.
Okay.
So at least they're taking it a little more seriously than I think other MLS teams have when it comes to the CONCACAF Champions League.
And MLS doing them a favour with no game scheduled this weekend, right? I assumed it was laid out this way. It's not just the luck of the draw.
I would guess so, yeah.
Okay. So, we'll be back to talk about that game on Wednesday, and we'll hopefully have another show for you on Tuesday. Until then, Taylor Rockwell, thank you designated player you, for taking the time to talk to me today.
Right back at you, buddy.
Listeners, thank you for listening, and we'll talk to you again very soon.